Hello, Del Baloo back again. This is part 2 of Hibiscus, mixed media, watercolor, and pastels. There are little things that you can buy that will help you in blending your color. Now, mine look pretty bad because they've been in my charcoal box and obviously picked up charcoal dust. I think these are called stubs, but don't quote me on that. But when you go to the art supply store, you can find these, and this one in particular looks like paper that has just been twisted together, rolled together. So you can look for these. They're great for picking up color, but they're also good for blending color. And I will be using this probably more in the finishing stages, but it's good not to use your fingers too much because your fingers have oil on them and maybe even sweat, so you don't want to get too much of your body oils on the painting itself. So this will be fun to go back and work on. And when your tip gets too many colors on it, you can take it over and wipe it on your paper towel like I do with the pastels themselves. So just a little extra information for you today. So what I have left to do on this flower color-wise is the red, the darker reds. And so I'm just going to get busy here covering those up and blending them as I go along with these purples. And I'll put a little bit around in here to sort of blend and pull in some of the red. Like everything else, I think it's probably important in your artwork that you get a feel for things and make some good choices before you actually put paint on your canvas, or in this case pastels on your drawing, because it's a little bit more difficult to cover things up or to rework them than if you get it right the first time. So do keep that in mind. Now I'm just kind of reaching around in here and adding, because this is round. I don't have those same corners, but I do have a flat spot on the other end that I can use for those close areas or for making lines. If you're working on a much larger painting, you can certainly cover a lot more area by either using these smaller pieces that are already broken off, and you can work them on the side and make your painting go a little bit faster. But for a painting of this size, you don't actually want to do too much of that kind of thing. Just create for you some more places that you have to go over. The most wonderful thing to me about artwork is the color and the ability to blend colors and make them as bright or as subdued as you want them to be. When I was a child, I wanted to paint. And I did my share, as most children, especially little girls, do when they're growing up and fascinated by art, crayons and markers and such. But as I got a little bit older, painting became such a mystery to me. I remember standing in a discount store, can't remember the name of it now, but standing and looking up at the paintings that were hanging on the wall high above me, and just wondering how in the world does anybody do that. And at one point I actually bought one of them and brought it home, and looking back at it now, it was actually pretty garish in terms of color and texture and so forth, but at the time it was a real fascination for me. But once I started putting brush to canvas and figured out what it was all about, I've been in love with color and form since then. So I'm thankful to God for giving me talent and creativity, which, by the way, I did not actually find or realize that I had until I accepted Jesus as my Savior in 1975. And I've just been having a ball ever since. Okay, I'm going to blend right over into that purple. And what it will do is just make my red darker. Didn't really want to do that at first with this red because I didn't want to muddy my colors right away, but now I'm pretty much finished with the dark reds. I'm going to use my stump that I found to go over and blend some of this in. But first I think I'm going to work on my leaves, because I don't want to spend very much time with these pastels in part 2, because I want to do some finishing up. And I'm learning that the longer the videos are, the more technically difficult they are to upload. But that's, I think, a personal problem, and I'm working on it. And I'm putting in my yellows on my stamen here. Okay, I'm going to put just a little speck on these and then come back with my red, especially with my red pencil, so that I can make them a little more orangey. Just remember, what we're doing here is blending, and I don't know if you can tell in the video, but well, this particular point is not especially sharp, but it's harder, and it allows me to do more blending. So you might want to invest in some pastel pencils, as well as the little blocks of pastels, as each has its own purpose. When you're finished with your pastel painting, you can spray it with a fixative, And actually, if you do it carefully, you can spray a light spray as you're working to help your pastels to adhere to the paper better. But you definitely want to fix it after you're finished painting. But here's a little trick. You can use hairspray to do the same thing. I would be careful with the hairspray and spray it very gingerly and in layers. If you wet it too much, it could spoil your painting. And some hairsprays are wetter than others. So you want to keep that in mind as you choose your hairspray. As I'm looking at this further, I think I need to add some yellow. And let's try this more orange. I'm putting some white in this area because it's quite light in the photograph as it catches daylight. So I'm going to lighten it significantly and then put some more of the orange in it. See, in that case I had to blow off some of that chalk dust. So I could see where I was going. There's an area right over here. It's quite light where that petal lifts up a little bit. So let's fill that in. You also don't want to rub too hard on the surface of your paper because you can flatten it. And if you flatten it too much, I'm really liking what this is doing, this yellow pencil is doing. I'm sitting by my sliding doors for a couple of reasons. One, the light is good and my view is awesome because I live on the marsh, so I get to look up and see the marsh. But the kind of downside to that is that the light does change pretty dramatically sometimes. As the sun is going down, it's shining directly in here on my painting. So So I'm going to have to stop and call this finished for session or part 2 so that I can change the light, move my camera and my painting around. But I will be back in part 3. Please join me there. And thank you for coming. Thank you for paying attention. And we'll be back together soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.